Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Two Guys Exploring Christianity. I forgot to click that button, didn't I? Two Guys Exploring Christianity. There we go. I think we're on episode 3 or 4. I'm not really sure. This might be 4. However, today will be will certainly be part 2 of last week's production, which was the birth narratives. So if you guys are enjoying the series, be sure to go back and look at all the previous videos, because each one of these will kind of be freestanding, except for this one will be 2 parts, of course. We may have more than 2 parts. This might go on for 6 or 8 videos because Greg's approach here is to really just get down and like really zoom into the areas and discuss everything around each issue with each verse. So we may cover 3 or 4, we might cover 1, we might cover 10, depending on how the flow of things goes. So, but again, really appreciate all you guys as usual joining in chat with all your with your insight and even your questions. And so those are definitely viewed after the show. It kind of gives us ideas on what to, if you need to have comments. I know, Greg, you've got a few follow-ups you're working on as well.
Yes. And
so that's where we're at. So today we're hitting part 2 of the birth narratives.
Part 2,
welcome
birth
back,
narratives, contrasting the birth narratives.
Yes.
Again, only in the Christian Bible. No rabbinic anything to do with any of this. Just the New Testament, the Christian Scripture authors. I would like to say thank you very much to a couple of emails that I received. One was particularly heart-wrenching. That it's from a husband, and I sent you an email back that I would have to discuss it, and I gave you my phone number to call me, and you can call me anytime. He had realized that Christianity was not exactly his cup of tea, but his wife is remaining in the church. And that, ironically, that is the fulfillment of what Jesus said he was going to do, that he was going to turn family members against each other. That's in right angle juxtaposition of the Hebrew Bible, when the Messiah, or in the Messianic area, when Elijah the prophet comes, he turns the hearts of the fathers to the sons. In other words, he reconciles families. But Jesus specifically says, that would be in Matthew 12, I believe, that Matthew 10, he intentionally will divide families. That's, I don't make it up. I simply read it. And so my heart goes out to that person that sent me that. And again, you have my phone number. You can call me. And I have run into this multiple times. The other one is from a man who has his views of Jesus very categorized and written down very well, and I appreciate that very much. I believe he has 8 points of what he believes. He doesn't believe really that Jesus is God, but he has this very high Christology, not as high as John, the book of John, but he has a very high Christology. And I've run into this with some different minor, I'll call them minor sects of Christianity. The Anabaptists is the one, and they have a low Christology as far as relative to most of mainstream Christianity. So both of those emails I received, nice. I will make a show out of them.
That's great. And just as a comment for the one who's going through the marriage issue, one thing, because people ask me from time to time about how me and my wife and children came out of Christianity, and the problems that we endured as well. So basically the way I handled my leaving the New Testament behind with the wife, she was still Christian, was I basically came to her because she noticed something was different, because my prayers were different, the things I was studying was different, and we, but this time we had like a home church and there was people coming to, and we was teaching them and stuff, and so it became very awkward really quick whenever I left, and very noticeable. And And so basically what I told her was, I said, look, I said, I love you. I said, have no intention of living apart from you, but I said, let me do my studies kind of the way I need to. I'll let you do your studies the way you need to. And that way we don't have to fight about it. We can just you just keep studying, keep doing your thing, keep doing your thing. And she agreed. And ironically, I guess that seed of her knowing that I was doubting it at the time got her to researching it on her own. And the crazy thing is, we ended up at the same spot at the same time because she started studying it out for herself to see if all this weird stuff I was experiencing was true or not. And so studying completely apart from each other, we ended up right here.
So, that's as good as it can get. I'm hoping for a similar. We have a mutual friend in Shannon Nunson. Mm-hmm. And she was a Christian, or a very devout Christian, and her dad was a preacher, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she came to the same kind of place that a lot of people are coming when they actually study the Christian scriptures. And her dad was very, very upset that she had left the church. But ultimately, her dad, who was a preacher, realized that she was correct. And I'm in the same situation with my parents and my in-laws. They think I'm crazy. They really do. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I do know, that I will continue to love them. My parents were wonderful to me. My in-laws have been wonderful to me. I never ever try to push it. If you can understand what I mean by that, I don't bring it up. We still go to in my life right now, I still go to family Christmas and family Easter meals. My mother doesn't call it Easter anymore. She calls it Resurrection Sunday. She hasn't called it Easter for a long time. I think that's just in deference to me. But so I don't know exactly what an actual Orthodox rabbi would say about my current situation. I don't celebrate Easter. I go to a meal at my parents' house, and I go to a meal at my in-laws' house. And do they pray before the meal? Yes, they do. Do I participate in the prayer? No, I don't. I don't.
Right.
But I'm not the kind of guy that turns down a free meal.
Yeah, I had to stop that as well. In fact, that was probably one of the most awkward things that I had to stop in because was the prayer part. As I mentioned before, when we had our home church here, everybody knew right away. In fact, that we quickly disintegrated once they realized I stopped praying in Jesus' name. Because it was problematic, and so, right. Anyway, so I'm completely with you on that.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, we want to, I want to make this plain. The Pharisees of Jesus' day did not latch on to the Christian scriptures. The reverse happened. In other words, there were no Pharisees that were claiming that Jesus was a fulfillment of the Hebrew Bible. None. But the Christian authors latched on to the Hebrew Bible. For whatever reason, we can speculate. My guess is that they wanted to attach themselves to something that was proven, something that already had a long history, that was established. It was a lot easier for a brand new religion to attach itself to one that was already established. New religions start all the time, but Christianity obviously took root and prospered. And to a big part of that, ironically, is they're attaching themselves to the Hebrew Bible. In other words, people, I think almost even non-Jewish people, I think we almost instinctively, if we'll study the Hebrew Bible, I think that Hashem kind of guides us. When you start reading the book of Ezekiel, you just know that you're reading God's word. And when a church gives you an Old and a New Testament in a Bible, and you read it all together, you conflate the two together as all being God's word. So the church did that. What the church had to do when they attached themselves to the Hebrew scriptures, they had to alter what the Hebrew Bible says. And they did that in a very careless way because they left the evidence for anybody to look at it that wants to. The Christian Bible quotes the Hebrew scriptures hundreds of times, and they give you the Hebrew scriptures along with their Bible. So if you will turn in the book of Romans to the 15th chapter, and we will go to the 12th verse, we read, "And again Isaiah saith, there shall be a root of Jesse, and he that shall rise to reign over the Gentiles, in him shall the Gentiles trust." And of course, the author of Romans, which we know that Romans is written by Paul. Remember, we have 7 for certain books by Paul. Those are Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Philemon, Philippians, and 1st Thessalonians. 1st Thessalonians being the earliest book in the Christian canon. So we know that the Apostle Paul is writing this, and of course, Romans 15 verse 12 is about who? It's about Jesus. And Isaiah is telling us that this root of Jesse, he shall rise, he will reign over the Gentiles, in him shall the Gentiles trust. Now, when we just flip back in our King James Bible and we go to the verse that Paul is quoting, we find that in Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 10. Isaiah chapter 11 verse 10 says, "And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign," which shall be a sign, a banner type, "of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious." Now,
That says that
again,
in the King James.
It says that in the King James.
I pulled it up.
In that, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I pulled it up on Chabad.org. Let me go back to the Bible Gateway, because realistically we want to use what most Christians are reading, not what. So let me do that.
Correct. Yeah,
that was,
I use the King James version again because, like I stated in one of the first shows, nobody hates it.
That was Isaiah. What was that?
11:10. Isaiah 11:10.
11 and 10. Here we go.
"In that day there shall be a root of Jesse."
There we go.
And you can know who the root of Jesse is if you just will read, even in your King James Bible, you will read who the root of Jesse is. When this root of Jesse comes, if you just read back through the previous 10 verses of this chapter, you would learn what is happening when the root of Jesse is standing as an ensign for the people, and Gentiles are seeking him. Lambs are lying down with lions. Actually, the wolves are laying down with lambs.
Right.
Yeah. Lions are eating grass. This is the picture that is painted in your King James Bible in chapter 11. And then when we get to verse 10, the root of Jesse, the Messiah, there's no question that the root of Jesse being prophesied here in chapter 11 of Isaiah is the Messiah. But as numerous people will teach you, the Hebrew Bible doesn't talk a whole lot about the actual person who is the Messiah. Very little is known about him personally. A lot is known about him as to what will be the clear signs Remember, that's a very important thing, falsifiable signs of what will happen. So the question for a Christian is, when Jesus was on the earth, did wolves and lambs lay down together? Did lions eat grass? Because as Paul is trying to get you to believe in Romans 15, Jesus is this person, and the Gentiles will trust in him. Now, it doesn't say in Isaiah, it doesn't say the Gentiles will trust in him. It says the Gentiles will seek him, and his rest shall be glorious. Paul doesn't talk anything about the rest of the Messiah's rest that's here. We know that there will be a rest in the Messianic kingdom. That's a whole part of it. We don't have war, we don't have famine, we have nothing. But I just want you to please endeavor to find this stuff for yourself. All you have to do is get a study Bible and read the passage in the New Testament, in the Christian scriptures, and then just flip back in the same Bible and read it, and then make an evaluation yourself as to whether or not it sounds plausible. And if the Christian scriptures have changed the Hebrew scriptures, then just take it for what it is. Christianity is a new religion. It's not based on the Hebrew Bible. It's not based on the prophets of Israel. It's a new religion. And in our country, you are free to believe in a new religion. And okay, there's, like I've said, if you think Jesus can change the Hebrew scriptures, okay. But we're not talking about Jesus changing the Hebrew scriptures here. We're talking about Paul changing the Hebrew scriptures here. So one of the emails I got was that Jesus can change the scriptures. Okay, who else can change the scriptures? If Paul is allowed to change the Hebrew scriptures also, then who can't change the Hebrew scriptures? That's a great question for Christians, for preachers, for apologists. I would love to hear the answer to that, because there are changed. And like I said, I told William before we started the show that I'd like to find a way to just publish these. I mean, there are literally hundreds of them where the New Testament, the Christian scriptures, change what the Hebrew Bible says in their own translation. That's the key. Again, I know that there is a lot in the Christian world. There is nearly universal mistrust of anything rabbinic. That's just a fact. There's no evangelical churches that welcome a rabbi to say a prayer or that welcome a rabbi to teach a class. That doesn't happen. So I'm trying to take the rabbi part out of this and just show you what the Ryrie's Christian translation says. And then you can make, eventually, we will get into what the Hebrew Bible says. And that's very interesting. That's an eternity of shows. But right now, I'd just like to focus on, this is what the Christian translators are giving you, and this is what it says. So you have to make a decision. You have to make a life-changing decision. So, all right. So, last week we discussed the birth narrative that is recorded for us in the book of Matthew. We went through, so we got kind of quick at the end, but don't sidestep those fulfillment texts, because some of the fulfillment texts that are cited by the author of Matthew, we're virtually certain that Matthew didn't write Matthew. You can just take a look at chapter 9, verse 9 in the book of Matthew. And when Matthew is being called, it's in the third person. The irony is that the the text that records the calling of Matthew in the book of Mark, which was written before the book of Matthew, the text of the calling is identical. In other words, he is in the book of Mark, he is called in the third person as well. And verse 9, or chapter 9, verse 9 of Matthew. So Matthew, if you want to believe that Matthew wrote Matthew, Matthew introduces himself in the third person like Mark introduced him. That's not very plausible as far as I'm concerned. But those fulfillment texts in the book of Matthew, that he would be called a Nazarene, that doesn't exist anywhere in the Hebrew canon. Even you can take a Strong's Concordance, a Christian Strong's Concordance, and just look up the word Nazarene or Nazareth. The word does not exist anywhere in the Hebrew canon. So how can it be a fulfillment of the Hebrew Bible if the Hebrew Bible does not mention it? You will find certain fixes that go along with that, but you will have to find if they're plausible or not. So anyway, in the book of Matthew, we get Mary and Joseph. They live in Bethlehem. They don't have to journey to Bethlehem. The wise men journey to Bethlehem. 2 years later, roughly, when the wise men arrived, that's when Herod kills all of the 2-year-old babies, and they have to flee to Egypt. We went over the genealogy in the book of Matthew, and I think the striking common or very simple math error that is made by the author of the book of Matthew to say that he has recorded 42 generations, but only record 41. That seems like a insurmountable problem as far as God-breathed perfection of the word. Numbers don't have translation problems. In other words, it's easy to translate numerical values from one language to another. So you have a big problem with the fulfillment passages, with the genealogy, and then we arrive at the book of Luke. And I think of all the texts in the Christian Bible that are problematic for the church, the most problematic verse is found in the first chapter of Luke, and it is found in the 6th verse. And we will read it together. Well, we'll start at the 5th verse. Sorry, we'll start as the introduction to the 5th verse.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1 of Luke.
Verse 6, okay.
There was, in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zechariah of the course of Abia, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron.
1 second. You're starting from what verse?
Verse 5, sorry.
Oh, okay, there you go. There, I was looking at
verse 5. Introduction of John the Baptist's parents.
Okay.
All right. Interesting. What tribe are they from? They are from the tribe of Levi. Zacharias and his wife, Elizabeth, are both Levites. Verse 6 then, and they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless. Okay, so Christian viewers of this program, I really want you to let that sink in for just a minute. Zechariah and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist, are without sin. They are blameless before God. They keep the commandments. They keep the ordinances. They are blameless. I would like again, I'm not setting up straw men. I'm not being mean. I'm searching for answers as well as William is. We both are. There's a lot of us that are. I want the preacher at your church to tell you how two people, Zechariah and Elizabeth, can keep the commandments. Because I have never been in a church in my entire life that said you could keep the commandments. Now the Hebrew Bible says you can over and over again. It gives us examples. Famously, Genesis 26, go to verse 5, and you read that Abraham kept all the commandments, the statutes, and the ordinances, and was without sin, was blameless before God. He kept everything. But in the church, where we enter into a new covenant in the church, and we have to realize that there's some kind of a ethereal mystery paradigm shift, and you can't keep the commandments. Really, nobody could, but they thought they could. Well, here's your New Testament authors, your Christian author, authoring the book of Luke, the same person that wrote Luke also wrote Acts, and it specifically says that they kept the commandments. Now, when I was a good church boy, I oftentimes would observe this and ask, hey, how did they keep the commandments? Well, you've got to understand. And it always begins with, well, you've got to understand, or it starts with a big word. The fact is that the author of Luke, who may have had some kind of connection to the Hebrew Bible, understood that people could keep the Torah, as you are clearly told in the 30th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, where our Creator says, I don't give you this Torah that you got to go find it, or you got to go up to heaven and somebody bring it down. You can do it. Very clearly, that's what Paul lops off, or one of the authors of the Christian scriptures lops off. So, in the beginning of the birth narrative in Luke, we are introduced to this very painful for the church verse, where we have Levites who are keeping the commandments. So I'm hoping, really, really hoping, that this verse sparks a lot of dialogue. Please send me emails about this, because I want to know how this can be. So, all right. So we go through the birth of John the Baptist. We get to the 26th verse of the first chapter of Luke. And in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth. Okay, we are not introduced to this in the account of Matthew. Here in the book of Luke, this is where Mary and Joseph live. Remember, in the book of Matthew, where do Mary and Joseph live? Bethlehem. They live in Bethlehem. Now they live in, or at least Mary lives in Nazareth. She's a virgin. She's espoused to Joseph. The angel comes in, says, all hail, thou art favored. She says, I don't know how this can be. The angel says, in verse 30, "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus." And one thing I was hoping from last week when we asked the question, why isn't his name Emmanuel? Where does Jesus come from? That's my big question. And I didn't get a single email about it. Was there any comments about it that you know of?
I didn't see
William?
any. I did not see any.
You didn't see any?
No,
Okay,
sir.
I didn't see any. I mean, this is like the big glaring one as far as I'm concerned, because we have completely named all of our churches pretty much after Jesus. I mean, it's Jesus this, Jesus that, Jesus everything. And like one of the rabbis said, and he said it very well, he said, if you don't think Jesus is the focal point of worship in a evangelical church, you've never been in an evangelical church. It's all about Jesus and what Jesus did for me and how Jesus is. But I still have never had a single, and remember, I'm one of the oddest people that you will ever meet, because I intentionally seek out preachers to ask them these questions. And I think they're real questions. I don't know why it wouldn't be a real question. How can your religion be named after something that was never stated in the verses that you say are the progenitor of your religion? Hey there, I got in a big word, progenitor. So that one guy
like
that
it.
wanted us to say big word, that
Right.
got progenitor in.
So there's your big word for the day.
There's your big word for the day, yeah. But it's a legitimate question, because you base your religion, you base the birth of Jesus on Isaiah 7:14. And the boy who is born in Isaiah 14 is Emmanuel, or Emmanuel. So how it went to Jesus, I don't know. So here in Matthew, there are some minor discrepancies here. In Matthew, Joseph is told that to name him Jesus after he's conceived. Here in Luke, Mary is told to name him Jesus before he is conceived. You can reconcile that. You can say that just Matthew's recording Joseph's ordeal, so that's not a big deal. But very specifically, the prophecy in Isaiah is that she shall name him. And we have a problem with that here in the New Testament rendering, because they name him in the New Testament. I never have figured that out exactly either. So, okay, we go to the 33rd verse of Luke. "And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end." Now I want the viewers to realize that this is probably for certain one of, if not the most messianic prophecies that is contained in the Christian scriptures. This is a real messianic prophecy, because all of the prophets of Israel agree that the Messiah will reign, that is, rule, will sit on the throne of David, and will rule not just the kingdom of Israel, but will rule the entire world. We are, if as a Christian, if you would just start reading, if you read Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Isaiah, you would get a real pretty good picture of what happens in the Messianic kingdom and what the conditions of the world are. If you just look on the United Nations building in New York, you can get kind of an idea of what the Messianic kingdom will be like. They quote part of Isaiah chapter 2 on the United Nations building. And that's almost a whole show in itself, because how that got inscribed on the United Nations building in New York is not almost impossible. But so here we have a very clear, and remember, what did we talk about? We talked about the prophecies being falsifiable. So right here is a very falsifiable prophecy that we are told the angel Gabriel is assigning to Jesus, still unconceived as this point. He will reign. That means rule. That means sit on the throne of David. And how long does that rule extend? It extends forever. There shall be no end. You know what? The prophets of Israel agree with this verse. Absolutely. There is no question that the Messiah will reign over the house of Israel. Remember, Jacob is oftentimes simply a substitute for Israel, because Jacob is the father of Israel. So sometimes when it means the nation of Israel, it says Jacob. So don't underestimate the power of this verse right here. So if Jesus sets on the throne of his father David and rules over the house of Israel, and his reign is still continuing today, Jesus is the Messiah. He is the promised Messiah. If Jesus does not today sit on the throne of his father David and rule over the house of Israel, then guess what? He is not the promised Messiah. It is literally as simple as that. I watch a lot of very smart men who are far smarter than I am. They are very, very learned Christian apologists. And they all have a certain mannerism about them. They all have a certain way of speaking. It is somewhat intimidating, because there's a particular one. He's not really an apologist. Well, he is, but he didn't go to Biola or Dallas Theological Seminary or a place like that. He's kind of a non-seminary educated one. He can talk quicker and use more big words in 1 minute than I can in an hour. But he will never address what I just stated very clearly, just as a layman. This will never be talked about, and it will never be stated, because again, remember, I was in the church for a long time. When we read through this, we read over this. But the angel's prophecy is very clear and very falsifiable. So don't let it go. Now, in the church, of course, as Jesus doesn't, there's a man named, darn it, I can't remember. I have a book of his. The name will come to me. He's from England, and he came up with the very unique way of looking at Jesus. And he says, well, nobody expected him to die. Okay, well, that's unique. Nobody expected Jesus to die. And for a Christian, with the Christian scriptures, this fills in some holes, so to speak. But the truth is that there's no talk anywhere in the Hebrew Bible of the death of this Messiah. And please send me emails about this, because I have asked 200 preachers to give me the verse where the Messiah dies. I am still awaiting that verse. Apologists don't ever talk about it either. So, but this is, and again, here we're going to applaud this for the author of Luke stating a very falsifiable prophecy. When the church spiritualizes this, and that's the only option for the church to do, is to spiritualize this. Well, Jesus really sits on a spiritual kingdom, on a spiritual throne in spiritual heaven. Please don't be fooled, because even the author of Luke, who is arguably a Christian, knows enough about the Hebrew Bible that he realizes that the reign will be over the house of Israel. How he authors this, probably roughly in 75 or 80 AD, that's a question for another huge show. But that's something that you can look at. Mary confirms that she is a virgin, and the angel says, "The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God." All right? We are very clearly instructed here that this will be a holy thing. A question I have for the church: we are always instructed by people who are smart that God had to step in and father the Messiah, because he couldn't be born from sinful man. Isn't sinful woman part of sinful mankind?
Right.
That's a good question. If we had to withdraw the male essence from the equation because of sin, and that's what we're taught by preachers, by Christian apologists, why was it okay for the sinfulness of woman to be included in this? That question, again, my goal is to ask questions that I think are very obvious, but never, ever, ever get addressed by a Habermas, a Lycona, a Turek. Never. Lee Strobel will not send you a video at Christmas time talking about how does the inherent wickedness of woman somehow not matter in the birth of a perfect, holy child. Now, of course, the Catholics the Catholics do address this in that, well, okay, Mary is also without sin, but that only does one generation. How can Mary be without sin because her mother wasn't without? In other words, for Catholic theology to work, and again, I don't think any evangelical Christians tune into this channel agree with Catholicism. They don't. They really don't. But that's a great question. You can send me emails about that one, because here it is right here in your Christian scriptures. That which is conceived in you is holy. It's without sin. It's perfect. It has to be without sin and perfect, because in Christian theology, Jesus is God. Not all Christian theology, by the way. There's a lot of Christian theology out there that does not have Jesus being God the Father, but the vast majority does. Okay, so Mary, of course, asks, "Oh, how can this be? With God, nothing is impossible. Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, be it according to your word." She agrees to the whole thing. So then she goes to visit her cousin. Now remember, we are told that Mary and Elizabeth are first cousins. They're first cousins. Mary and Elizabeth is from the tribe of Levi. We are told that Joseph and Mary are from the tribe of Judah. So, can a person, could Mary and Elizabeth's parents be brother and sister? They technically could be. If you want to look up the possibilities of this, feel free to do so. It would be unlikely, but I'm conceding that they are cousins, because I could never prove that they aren't. What I'm saying is that it is unlikely that Mary and Joseph, both being from the tribe of Judah, and Zechariah and Elizabeth, both being from the tribe of Levi, that they would be first cousins.
So the assumption,
but that's possible.
So is it an assumption that Joseph and Mary are from the same tribe? Because
well, we're told that Joseph is from Judah. He's from the line of David, and then since the book, and we'll get to the Luke genealogy, we're told that, well, this is Mary's genealogy, and really the only fix in the Christian scriptures to bring these two together, because if I would contend that both genealogies are what the author understood to be the genealogy of Joseph, because we know from the Hebrew scriptures that the father is the only one that can bestow tribal affiliation. As if a man from the tribe of Judah marries a woman from the tribe of Simeon, the sons are Judah. They're from Judah, patrilineally. We are told this explicitly. You don't have to write me emails about this. In the first chapter of the book of Numbers, we are told this exclusively. I believe if you go to Numbers 27 or 32, one of those two, we read about some daughters whose husbands died, and their father, or they died without children, and they wanted to inherit their father's land. And they were allowed to inherit their father's land. Well, see, there you go. Now that means that it's not just by patrilineal descent. But read carefully. Read carefully. The daughters had to marry men from the tribe in order to get the inheritance. Mm-hmm. And how is that? So Christian apologists make these assertions and talk about how screwed up the rabbis are. But if they would just read the entire text, they could just figure it out on their own. But they, and then one thing that bothers me, I will promise the viewers this. If you, and I am positive, I'm positive that I am going to get some stuff wrong. There is no way that I tell you everything perfectly correct. If you correct me on anything, on any point, I will absolutely talk about that on the next show, and I will give you a big hand because you're studying, and that's what I want. But when the Christian apologists, when a rabbi corrects them, they never ever issue a heartfelt, contrite apology. And I would always issue a heartfelt, contrite apology because I don't want to mislead you in any way. I don't even want to mislead you in where I say a verse is at. And I know I'm going to make some mistakes on that because the scriptures are slowly gelling in my jelly brain, but not like the really good rabbis. The really good rabbis, they just hardly ever make a mistake as to where something is found, and I will make those mistakes for certain. So anyway, so we visited our cousin. We have done Mary's. It's called the Magnificat. It's her prayer / praise for being chosen. It's heartrending. It really is. I mean, it's humble. It's remember, Christianity really appeals to our, you know what I mean? It really does.
Right.
It paints this really safe and secure kind of abode. And Mary plays the role very well in her prayer and praise. In verse 57, then John is born, John the Baptist. We again, we aren't told anything about John. John the Baptist plays no role in Matthew's birth narrative. He plays arguably the main role in Luke's birth narrative. So we go through his birth. His dad is, can't speak and comes out and says his name will be John. And then everything that transpires right up to the beginning of chapter 2 is pretty much about John the Baptist. Now we arrive at the birth of Jesus. Remember in Matthew, we live in Bethlehem. Everything happens in Bethlehem. But here, where do we live? We live in Nazareth. We have to get to Bethlehem. And in the days of Caesar Augustus, a decree goes out that all the people should be taxed. That should be, all the world should be taxed. That verse is virtually seared into my brain. And the taxing was first made by Cyrenius, the governor of Syria, and all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. And Joseph went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth unto Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. This is another, not only the giving away of the book of the genealogy of Luke to Mary's side, but here they both go down to Judea, so we assume that Mary is from Judah as well. Now, I want to paint a picture because when we go to the church and we see the Passion or the Easter narrative or the Christmas play and the Easter narrative, that's where we mostly get our entire thing. And in the Christmas, and by way of confession, my young children were the baby Jesus in every Christmas play. And right. Since I had 3 of them, and they were always just that right size to be the baby Jesus. But we get the picture of Mary and Joseph. Mary's riding on her donkey, and they're walking along the road, and they're going to Bethlehem. Well, that's very quaint. Oh my gosh, that's like, again, that's what a sacrifice Mary is making. What a sacrifice Joseph is making. But understand what you have to believe for this first 4 verses to be true. This is a empire-wide census. And the Christian scriptures, again, no rabbis are involved in this. The proclamation from Caesar is you have to go to your hometown and get taxed. Think about that for a minute. If today, and remember Joseph's family from Bethlehem, roughly, oh gosh, it would be, what? Help me out here, William. That
What was it?
800 to 1,000 years ago
What was the
would have
question? I'm
been
sorry.
when David was in
He was in.
when David lived in Bethlehem.
I
It
think
would
he
be
was 1,000 BCE. I thought, or something like
right
that.
about 1,000. Yeah, about 1,000 years. So David or Joseph, we are informed, knows where his ancestors are from. That's plausible for a Jewish person because Jewish people kept very good records of their genealogies. But how many people are leaving their present hometown and going back to their ancestral village or their ancestral city? And again, this is for the entire empire because it says that all the world should be taxed. And remember, in under the Roman Empire was known, that was the world. Anything outside the Roman Empire was of no account. So, like, say if your ancestors were from, I don't know, France, and you lived in Judea, do you head to France? Can you imagine the impossibility of the logistics? We get told that, I mean, it's plausible that Joseph and Mary can travel from Nazareth down to Bethlehem. But that's not what we're told here. Please don't. I try to read the text for what it says. And this is a kingdom, an empire-wide edict to travel to your hometown. Do you think that there are enough ships to transport people that their families were from, say, Northern Africa, which is part of the Roman Empire, back to Rome because they were from Rome originally and they went? How about the Roman soldiers that are stationed at all the different outposts of the empire? Do they have to report back to their ancestral homes? According to the text, they do. So this would involve the absolute, basically, stopping of the empire. In other words, commerce would cease. Any type of transportation grid at the time was not like it is today. What is it, like 30 or 40 million people travel home for Easter in the United States? What if 300 million people had to travel home for Easter in the United States? Would there be enough airplanes? Would there be enough vehicles? Would there be enough roads? And we have arguably a transportation system that probably exceeds the Roman Empire's by a factor of hundreds. There just wasn't real easy ways to travel in the Roman Empire, even though it was better than it had been. So understand the logistics that I'm talking about here for the entire Roman Empire to return to their ancestral home to be taxed. Not only is it physically impossible, there's no historical record of it. There's no historical record that the Roman Empire ever did this. And we have good historians. We really do. And was this the only time it was done? Because we never, ever have in the history of the Roman Empire a time when something like this would happen. Okay, we get to the shepherds and the angels, and this is what you always see on Christmas morning. Shepherds, we have songs about this, we have everything about this. The shepherds and the angels sing to the shepherds go to Mary and Joseph, who are in the manger because there's no room for them in the inn. And Mary treasures all these things in her heart. All these things. And we are really close to the end of our time, and I did not get completed. And I didn't even get to the most important part.
Should we extend this and make this a little bit longer one,
We
or
got to extend. We got to extend it. I need another 15 minutes.
you got it? It's all yours.
I apologize because so viewers, you can do this on your own. I want you to learn what the length of the purification rites are for Mary according to the law of Moses. I'm even going to give you a hint. You can go to Leviticus 12, because according to the account in Luke, that's how long they spent in Bethlehem. Not 2 years, like we're told in Matthew. And I want you to compare and contrast the genealogy of Luke that we will read next week with the genealogy of Matthew that we read last week. And I want you to send me emails telling me what names match. That's your assignment.
That's some good homework.
Tomorrow.
That's some good homework. That'll keep you busy.
Homework.
It
and
is.
Then you participate. I want you to participate. I'm just, like I said, I just read it and I can remember stuff. And so I want you to participate in this, and this would be a great way to participate. And I am definitely going to share those 2 emails that I mentioned at the beginning of the show today. We're definitely going to highlight those and share, because the one about your wife, that's exceedingly important to me, and it's exceedingly important to William. I know that. It's even exceedingly important to rabbis.
Yep.
Because if there's one thing I don't want to ever do, that would be to come between a husband and his wife, or between a wife and her husband. I don't even want to come between grandparents and grandchildren. I don't want to come between anybody. I just want everybody to believe the prophets of Israel. So thank you again, William. I appreciate you more than you can possibly know.
Man, the feeling goes both ways, no doubt. No doubt.
All right.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. I will see you next week.
So, you're not going to take the 15?
Oh, I can if you want to.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to? Oh, we'll do it.
Yes.
We will do it. Okay.
Yep.
Well, then you don't have time. Then you've got to come up real quick. We will go then we're going to the second chapter. We're in the second chapter still. And we are at, go ahead.
Sorry, Luke. No, what were we at?
Luke chapter 2. We are at 22. And when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. Okay, and you bring your sacrifice. So we are in the temple with Simeon and Anna. Again, you could not paint a more perfect couple to do this. So we are told that Simeon has been waiting on the consolation of Israel forever, for his whole life. And we are told that Anna was married for 7 years, I believe, and then she's been a widow ever since. She spends all of her time in the temple. These are the most pious people that you could possibly imagine. And after the purification, they go to the temple. In verse 39, after everything has happened with Simeon and Anna, when they had performed all these things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to the city of Nazareth. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and grace of God was upon him. The purification rites for a woman are found in, I gave it away, it's in Leviticus chapter 12. It's 33 days for a boy. In other words, Mary has to wait 33 days, a little over a month. So she's there for 7 days, and then on the 8th day, Jesus is circumcised. Then her 33 days of purification, according to Leviticus chapter 12, are performed at the temple. After this, they go to Nazareth. Wait a minute. Where's Herod killing the 2-year-old boys? Where's the flight to Egypt? This is huge because it's a fulfillment of prophecy according to Matthew. According to Matthew, Jesus had to go to Egypt so that it could be filled what Hosea the prophet said in chapter 11, verse 1, that I will call my son out of Egypt. Remember, the author of Matthew just lops off the first half of that verse and just does the second half. I've called my son out of Egypt. Where's all that at? We go to Jerusalem in Luke. We go to Jerusalem. We have Jesus right when we get there. The angels and the shepherds attest to this. We wait 41 days in Jerusalem, and then we go back to Nazareth. If you're a Christian and you're hearing this for the first time, I'm with you, because I spent decades in the church and I didn't know what the length of a purification was. I'll bet you, and you can, this is another exercise for viewers, ask your preacher how long Mary and Joseph stayed in Jerusalem and see if he knows. Because according to the author of Luke, we should know exactly. It's 41 days. The 7 days and the 8th day to circumcise, and then the 33 days of purification. According to the law of Moses, we know exactly how long they were there. So how doesn't the author of the book of Matthew know that they, in other words, 41 days is not nearly enough time for the kings of the East to make their journey. In the church, we are told that this is, you didn't just hop on a bus and go to Jerusalem. If they lived in Persia, which is generally accepted as the place that the wise men are from, and that they have been bequeathed the means of Daniel, the prophet Daniel. It's a long journey, more than 41 days. And remember, in Matthew, Jesus is born and they see his star. And that's when they know to start their journey. And it is generally accepted among all Christian theologians that this took a long time. That's why Herod had to kill the boys who were 2 years old and younger when the wise men got there. Are you following me? I hope you're following me. I hope you're following how completely divergent these two birth narratives are, because we don't have, they're not narratives about the same event. Okay, they're narratives about the same event in that Jesus is born, but they're two complete different stories about how Jesus was born, the circumstances surrounding his birth, and all the things that will happen to him. They're two different stories. We can't reconcile these two stories because we don't spend any time in Bethlehem according to the book of Luke, or minimal time. We spend, and even that time, the 41 days, is not spent in Bethlehem. Most of it is spent in Jerusalem. And then they go back to Nazareth. And that's the end of it. Jesus grows up strong and wise. And the grace of God is upon him. And I believe in the there's a there's a better rendition of that. Favor. A lot of times in the King James, it's favor, and they always spell it F-A-V-O-U-R. Grace and favor are virtually the same thing. How does, in the church, Jesus is God? How could the grace of God dwell on God? Do you understand my question?
Ask it again.
How does the grace of God dwell on God? How does that happen? In other words, the scripture is very clear. You know, in the church, we're taught Jesus is God, but we are told that the grace of God dwells on Jesus, the favor. Why would Jesus, who is fully God in the church, why would he need the favor of God? Please send me emails about that question, because I want to know the answer to that question. I'd like to know the mechanics of how that could even happen. But past the mechanics, let's talk about why would there be a need for the grace of God to dwell on God? That seems very problematic for me.
Right.
So, tell you what, William.
Yes, sir.
Since I took almost another 20 minutes, we're going to leave Luke's genealogy
for next week.
This will be for you to investigate.
Okay.
So investigate this next week.
Yep, good opportunity to set up homework, no doubt.
Yes. Thank you very much again, sir.
Very good. And Mr. Mcbride, thanks for the ride. That was awesome.
You are welcome, sir. I appreciate it.
gcmcbride63@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the topics or related to this show, feel free to send those over to them, to Mr. Greg McBride. If you have anything relating just to the channel in general or any of my other rabbis, you can send me the email, which is on your screen now. William at... Actually, it's not. But good. William at TaNaCh. Why didn't I have that in there? It's William at TaNaChTalk.com, like the TaNaChTalk.com.
I think it's because of gross incompetence.
You may be right. That's funny.
Right.
Oh, man,
Have a
that's
good
great.
Day, sir.
Hey, man, you too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to seeing you guys same time, same place next week. Peace out, everybody. Shalom.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה